Welcome to another episode of the Reboot Chronicles, a no-holds-barred forum with global leaders, authors, entrepreneurs, and CEOs about how organizations stay focused on growth and innovation in unprecedented times. I'm your host, Dean Tobias, coming to you live from Reviv's North American headquarters in Chicago, and we would like to thank you for joining us from around the globe today. I'd like to welcome Stephen Yalof, President and CEO of Tanger, a leading operator of upscale shopping centers across North America. Tanger's portfolio includes dozens of outlet centers and top 50 MSAs and some tourist destinations as well. We'll talk about that. But they also have something that I found interesting, a 96% occupancy rate. I do not see that in San Francisco and Chicago and some of these other cities you all live in. The publicly traded REIT basically continues to reboot their retail experience with over 3,000 stores operated by more than 700 companies, including a lot of strong premium brands inside these centers. They've been public for over 30 years, but the stock has been on what I call a post-COVID bounce-back tear with Stephen as he began rebooting the company in 2020, which is now at about a $3 billion valuation with a $4.7 billion enterprise value. So pretty impressive growth, innovation, and leadership story here to unpack. Stephen, it's good to see you.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you're looking good there. It's an amazing story. We don't talk a lot about the stock market here, but that is what caught my eye when I looked at you. And so love to hear, you kind of came in cold and started rebooting. How have you been rebooting Tanger in terms of, or maybe even the sector as a whole? But let's start with the company.
Well, first of all, I've been doing business with Tanger pretty much my entire career. You go back 30 years when I started in this business, there was a lot more outlet competition. I was leasing outlets for a company called New Plan Realty Trust back in the days. My journey took me from leasing outlets to being on the other side of the transaction at both the Gap and Ralph Lauren, and now find myself 30 years later back on this side again. So I share that with you just to sort of give myself a little bit of credibility that I've been hanging around the hoop in this industry for quite some time. And having joined Tanger right in the middle of the pandemic, when I first joined Tanger, every single one of our shopping centers was closed. So it's pretty interesting.
Welcome to the company.
Yeah, pretty interesting strategy to take a job to operate shopping centers when, oh, by the way, they're all closed. And the one major structural change that occurred during that period of time was a lot of the retailers that were suffering, they're either losing market share, declining sales and revenue, hadn't reinvested in the brands forever, that had been hanging around the outlet hoop for a long time, decided that was the time that they were going to shut their doors. So now as we started to reopen shopping centers, we did so with far fewer tenants than we had before the pandemic. So we had to make some really interesting decisions back then, one of which was, how do we not necessarily refill space previously occupied by retailers with other retailers? How do we find alternative uses that are going to get folks out of the house, off the couch, and into the shopping centers? And I would say that was the beginning of the structural reboot for Tanger.
It was pretty bold. I mean, you must have had a decent balance sheet to get you through those times. But you're right. A lot of companies, they were already on the cusp of what we call irrelevance, obscurity, and decline. Many companies are on that cusp, and that's why they need a reboot before the turnaround guy shows up, before it's too late. And sounds like your timing was good, but more important was the strategy. What's shifted? What's changed?
Well, internet obviously has always had an impact for the last 10 years on retail sales and the frequency at which the consumer will actually visit a shopping center. Exacerbated by now everybody shopping online during those several months that people were home during COVID. And so we had to figure out a way not only to get people out of the house, but into our shopping centers. And as it turned out, us being predominantly an open air company, we were one of the first public gathering places to reopen. So,
Ah, all right.
right? So, with that comes this responsibility to create things for people to do so that you become the first place they think about when they actually leave their home, get in their car, and go someplace. So,
Beyond the shopping.
beyond the shopping. Yeah,
Huh.
but the word gathering is so critical
Right.
because people call shopping centers they don't call them gathering places, but at the end of the day, their ability to draw people together for that connection that was so vitally important that back half of 2020, we took that responsibility extremely seriously and made it our mission to bring more than just retail therapy to our customers, but food therapy, exercise therapy, amenity therapy, anything that we could do to get folks to gather together in these places. They can park their car, they can get together outdoors, they could shop, they could eat, and they can enjoy some entertainment. That's the direction we decided to go, thinking perhaps it was a short term strategy, but
Right.
ultimately realized that now we're seeing a lot more traffic than we were seeing in the past. The customers really responding to a lot of the new uses that we're putting into these properties. Maybe we have something that we should be leaning a little bit more heavily into.
Yeah, it's almost like a town square where there's a lot of brick and mortar shrinking. You're kind of saying, hey, we're a town square. Hopefully not the only town square, but in some. So and you've gone to a lot of. So you're in 50, MSAs and North America. You've got whatever 3,000 stores, merchants, dozens and dozens of locations, and many of them are actually in destination cities. Like a Nashville has turned into one, and many are just a destination in a city. Is that a fair way to put it?
Well, yeah. So when these things were built, and again, I gave you a little bit of my background. So 20 or 30 years ago, outlet centers needed to be remote.
Yep.
You didn't want to put a brand, didn't want to put their off-price business in a
Right
place that
next
would
door.
cannibalize their full-price business.
Yeah, I think Nordstrom learned that painfully. Theirs were a little close. The rack was a little. It was a 5 minute drive, and that didn't exactly. Good point.
Well, so because of that, historically, a lot of the older vintage shopping centers are a little bit further afield. And what's since happened over the last 3 or 4 years is a lot of those destinations, those drive to American tourist locations like Sevierville and Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, Myrtle Beach and Hilton Head, South Carolina, Savannah, Georgia, places like that where people were, visiting with their families annually, maybe several times a year if they had a timeshare or a second home. Now, what we were finding were folks were moving sort of out of the cities, more of a suburbanization of America. People were moving into a lot of the markets where our centers were that town square. So we
Yeah,
started
great
to not
timing.
only see a weekend traffic, the tourists that would fill the Airbnbs and the hotels every weekend, but now we're starting to see a lot more permanent population shop us during the week, which supported a lot of our ancillary businesses that we've since brought into the centers.
And you guys have a heavy southern U.S. presence, so that migration probably didn't hurt as well. How do you So back to the reboot. When you look at our build, buy, borrow analysis on the show here, we talk a lot about how do CEOs grow, and many it's like through acquisitions. With many, it's let's build it ourselves. With others, it's like let's do really smart partnerships that accelerate. So it seems like your decision tree is should we acquire or should we develop? Because you're a developer as well from scratch. And so, how do you think about that? How's that work in your strategy in terms of growing faster?
Well, it's really how you want to allocate your capital. In today's environment, it's pretty expensive to build a new shopping center. Land
Yeah.
costs have run away, but also the cost of construction and cost of labor has gotten to a point where it's the economics of building have gotten quite challenging. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean it can't happen. We just built a shopping center in Nashville. It's off to a really successful start. But we also, in the same time period, bought a existing shopping center in Asheville, North Carolina. And the economics of purchasing were far better than the economics of building new.
Yeah, I get it. It's not a good statement about America, though. It's by the time regulations and costs get to you. Yeah. But you are bringing life into old centers, which actually is good. Do you see a urban thing where you're going back downtown in some places? I don't know, like a Detroit or something.
Well, just going back to your previous statement first, I mean, this is a moment in time, and this is where interest rates being where they are, there's the cost of capital being as expensive as it is. So you have to make decisions when you're allocating capital that fit the time frame and allow you to grow pursuant to the narrative that you've created. Um,
And that's a great point because people listening to this 2 years from now, which they often do, it'll be a totally different market. And yeah, you might see waves going either way. Okay, that's good.
but from a strategic point of view,
Hmm.
yeah, outlet centers are definitely moving closer and closer in. And I would not say that our Nashville site is an urban site, but it is only 10 or 15 miles outside of the core city. Where, as I explained earlier, the older narrative was 30 miles to, an hour's drive time. So, we're finding that the brands that want to be in these environments are
Right,
looking, it's more, it's not as much about protecting their full price business as it is to how did they get an entry level price point in front of a customer regardless of where their customer is.
right. How do you compete? So online's been good for some big brands, like a Macy's or a Walmart, and with others not so much. Whereas Walmart and Amazon have been cleaning some clocks of some of the big guys. But how do you compete at any level? I know you're more of a the town square, not the actual merchant. But do you bring them all together in a marketplace or anything like that going on?
Well, from a digital point of view, we're embracing digital ourselves. We're using our digital initiatives to provide the consumer an opportunity to understand what's going to be in the shopping center before they decide to get in their car and drive out. From what brands are there, what discounts can we provide them when we get there. We can introduce them to a Tanger branded loyalty program that even gives them deeper discounts in exchange for them sharing information with us that allows us to market to them a little bit more selectively. So I think the digital narrative is a truly important one, and I think online shopping, that's not going away anytime soon. But I think it's become very commoditized. I think it's easy to buy products that a repeat product, things that you know exactly what you're going to get, versus 50% of our tenant mix is apparel retailers. And I would
Right,
argue that there's something about touching a product, trying a product on, whether it's a pair of shoes or clothing, even jewelry. I think people want to see themselves, they want to dream, they want to be part of it. And then the other important factor is that customer service, because people want to ask questions and they want to get an opinion. And I just think
right.
that the stores that are doing it best right now and the ones that are getting the most repeat shops are the ones that really provide that personal service, that customer service. In fact, I was with a friend the other day who bought a pair of sunglasses and insisted on going back to a store that they've been going to for years and years because the customer service was that good. They knew who they were. They had their all of their information in the computer. They could talk about what they had bought in the past. They can compare things. So I just feel like that's a really important component part of how business is conducted today.
Yeah, it's all different demographic shopping patterns, but I get the. I never thought about getting your opinion on when you're shopping with someone, but yeah, like do I look fat in this shirt? Everyone thinks I wear this. Everyone thinks I wear the same shirt every episode, but I just have a lot of these colors, same color shirts. The
I think you look great.
when you thanks when you look at well, we just had the CEO of of UPS Store on. So the amount of returns online is, I'll just use the exciting word, skyrocketing. And it's great for her business because she is a major return center for, it's great for store traffic for them as well. But they are returning so much stuff from all the online providers, specifically, Amazon is a huge one. So that's a good point. When you look at your, I was listening to your earnings call and stuff. You kind of outlined a three-pronged growth strategy. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that. And what interested me the most was like, hey, outside of the outlet center, what's adjacent to the center, and then is there life beyond outlet malls for you? And a follow up to that's going to be, is outlet malls now mainstream? Because more and more people are going there, just like they're going to Walmart. But separate question, of course.
Well, the three-pronged growth strategy is really our organic growth, meaning how much more can we do with the existing portfolio that we have? We run on the average somewhere about 10% of our shopping centers portfolio wide runs about 10% of temp tenants, and for us, temp tenants are critically important. They serve a number of different purposes, and I can talk about temp tenancy as a strategy in just a second.
So it's like seasonal and
Yeah,
in and out.
it's seasonal. It's retailers trying before. Look, there's a lot of barriers to entry into the outlet space.
Yeah.
Not a lot of retail. I was with a retailer yesterday, as a matter of fact, who said, "I've got plenty of excess inventory, but I don't know if that sells out in 6 months or if it sells out in 3 years." How do you write a 10-year lease with a retailer who wants to test the waters of the outlet space, but doesn't know how quickly their inventory is going to turn? Because many retailers are not manufacturing product for the outlets. They're selling excess inventory, they're selling overrun inventory, or they're taking excess piece goods and cutting them up and turning them into products that are best-selling products, just done in a different material, so that they can move through not only their inventory of existing, but also their piece good inventory. We see that happening all over the place. So that
What's that like? Is that like a handmade purse? What's an
well,
example of that?
let's take a blazer as an example. That was,
Yeah.
say, Ralph Lauren sold a blazer in I could call it a cotton jersey fabric that was a bestseller and sold out, and they happen to have yards and yards of other fabric. They'll take that same blazer, they'll cut it up in a different fabric in
Got it.
order to get
Yep.
rid of in order to move through the piece good inventory, but also put it in a product that was a bestseller product. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's ever been in a department store, but it's a best-selling silhouette being recreated in an excess inventory of fabric. So those two together allow them to achieve what it is they're looking to achieve, move through their excess inventory and convert it into cash. So retailers like that who have that strategic mindset sometimes come
Hmm.
into an outlet center on a short-term basis, just test the waters and see how quickly those things can move. In some instances, they create a whole new business for themselves. That's why we're willing to take that risk on a temp basis, because for the most part, they'll turn it into a long-term strategy.
Yeah, exactly. That's smart. And then what are the other parts of the strategy? The like beyond, like, is it not just going to be outlets anymore for you guys?
Well,
You're at that inflection point where you're pretty big.
I think what I was explaining to you earlier about our pivot from replacing outlet retailers with other outlet retailers and searching for alternative uses for some of the space to create more variety in our shopping centers. I'm going to use an old term, but you can say we're sort of lifestyling our outlet centers. So we're turning our open air outlet centers to more open air entertainment, experience, dining, and shopping centers. And we've created that muscle over the past 4 years. We've built a team that can execute to it from a leasing point of view, a team that can execute from a marketing point of view, and a team that can execute from an operations point of view. It takes different muscles to run those different types of businesses within your organization and within your center. That ability has given us the confidence to go outside that outlet narrative and enter into the lifestyle business. We just bought a shopping center at the end of last year in Huntsville, Alabama, that has already started to accrete as far as its success in our portfolio.
So that's like your lifestyle prototype, sounds like. Yep. And that's what a lot of the mainstream ones are doing. They're building these mixed use ones with nightlife and shops. But it sounds like yours is more daytime, nighttime, but not necessarily in living communities, but more destination.
Well, we're getting into some more community oriented stuff, and I think that that's a new avenue for us as a company, but it plays extremely well to the strengths that we've created as a management team.
So that goes to my other question. How much, I don't know what kind of data you have, but how much do consumers actually save on apparel in these outlet stores?
Well, interesting. Depends on the brand. I mean, you can walk into an outlet center and it's 30 to 50% off on a daily basis. And then if you stack on top of it additional value and additional savings that the retailer will offer out to the consumer, whether it's through the Tanger loyalty program or
Hmm.
some other program that the retailer themselves are running, there are days that you can save up to 70%. But the most important part about outlet is there is a value every single day, so that consumer who's looking for their favorite brand can get that brand at the best possible price every day in one of our shopping centers.
Interested in your take on how you've rebooted the culture. We've had a few CEOs on that have taken over family businesses, like the CEO of Amway, multi-billion-dollar, a few others. So that family enterprise. So shifting from Steve Tanger to you. I don't know if he hired you because you have a similar name or whatever. But how did you? How'd it go? And how have you? What's going on with the culture as you have brought in this kind of a jumpstart growth
Well,
mentality?
Steve Tanger was a great leader. And Steve Tanger's father, Stanley Tanger, who founded the business, I mean, they're both extremely formidable. I think both of them had
Pioneers.
different challenges. Stanley was an entrepreneur who basically had a shirt company out of Greensboro, North Carolina. They were selling their shirts, and they needed something to do with the excess inventory in the factory seconds. So they started selling them out the back door on weekends. They found out they were selling more out the back door than the front door, and the outlet business was born. They built that first shopping center 43 years ago in Burlington, North Carolina, and have been growing the business ever since. Stephen Tanger approached this business more. He was more of a developer and an acquirer of businesses. So he went out and really expanded the footprint of this business and took the company from the first 2, 4, 8 shopping centers to about 35 to 40 shopping centers, which is pretty much the size we're running right now. We've sold some, we've bought some over the couple of years since I've been here. They've established a wonderful ethos at Tanger. And there's a couple of things that they've done that I've never seen anywhere else. First of all, that we're heavily invested in the city of Greensboro.
Hmm.
The Performing Arts Center in Greensboro is named after Mr. Tanger. There are parks in this market that are named after the Tangers, and it's really a testament to their philanthropy and their giving back. But culturally, inside the four walls of this organization, there was one thing that they were doing that I thought was just that I wanted to perpetuate, and that was the 40 hours of community service that Tanger paid each of their employees to go back and give back in the markets that they live. It was a very, it was one of those plans that wasn't really talked about that much, but it was something that was in the sort of the corporate ethos. And when I joined the company, I thought that was so amazing. We
Yep.
created a 40-hour club. And that 40-hour club actually gets called out and rewarded. And we encourage everybody on our team to go back and give 40 hours that we pay for of community service in their communities.
Yeah, you guys were a pioneer there. A lot of tech companies have copied you and taken credit for it, but they, they don't realize they didn't invent that.
Well, I'm giving credit to the founders of our organization. I'll take
Yeah,
credit for
exactly.
perpetuating it and
Yeah,
and heralding it as a really important thing to do. We have a mission, vision, values over here at Tanger, and the number one. We have four core values. Our number one core value is consider community first. If you think about it, we are the center of the communities that we serve. Critically important that folks have a place to gather, but as important is that people who live proximate to those communities, a lot of first jobs are in our shopping centers. My first job, I worked retail, my first job. And
yeah. Me too.
right, a lot of us started that way. And when you
Yeah,
find folks that can work in a retail environment that close to their home in their community, serving people that they've, coming, they come across all day living where they live, it becomes a really important part. So when we built just outside of Nashville, we'll talk about our Nashville Tanger Outlets Nashville, and 12.5 million people a year that come through Nashville, and all the tourists and all the things that are going on. But at the end of the day, in that small little city of Antioch, where the shopping center actually sits, we employ a lot of people. And it has
I
been
bet.
life changing for the people of that community that work in that shopping center.
That's good. What kind of personal challenges have you had to overcome along the way?
Me personally, well, I've always wanted to be a really good guitar player, and I'm only just okay.
Me
Um,
too. That didn't happen. How's it going?
I've been, I can work on it every day. What kills me is when some 12-year-old picks up my guitar and says, "Oh, can you play this?" And I'm like,
You got to start hanging out in Nashville more. You'll pick it up.
I'm banging away. I'm doing the best I can. But that's always been a fun challenge for me. I guess that's sort of my personal challenge. Is I'm constantly challenging myself to just take myself out of my comfort zone, put myself in places and situations that I know it's not going to make me comfortable, but it's going to make me stronger. It's going to make me more confident, and hopefully, it's going to make me better. So that's kind of how I think of those challenges. I had a number of jobs. I really my resume. I'm so proud of my resume, but along the journey, there was one or two missteps that you make. And one of the things I've learned to do is just fail fast. If something doesn't look like it's going to work out, there's no honor in sticking things out just because your goal is to not give up on something that you tried. If you know in your gut it's not going to work, it's okay to move on. And I've made some strategic moves to move on. Thrilled that I did. I think I wouldn't be where I was today if I didn't have the opportunity um, to pivot quickly when I thought I was in the wrong place.
Yeah, it's great. It's great advice. It sounds almost canned, but a lot of us forget to do that. You hold on to it so long, and you know. What kind of advice would you give your 22-year-old self at this point, knowing what you know about the future?
Don't be afraid to try a bunch of things. I speak to my friends' kids all the time that are in that age group. They're constantly coming to me and asking me, how should I think? I want a job. I'm passionate about real estate. And I'm like, well, I'm thrilled you're passionate about real estate, but what part of real estate are you passionate about? Because real estate's a big thing. And there's a lot of stuff that you can do in real estate that, so you gotta explain it to me a little bit more. Um, and it's interesting. Whenever I interview somebody like that, I always give them a challenge, and I say, this is how you should be thinking about it. You're thinking about sales, you're thinking about finance, you're thinking about development, you're thinking about accounting. Take me through it, and I'll usually send them away and say, come back to me and give me a little bit more of a thoughtful approach to how you're thinking about it. I'm happy to have a follow up conversation with you. You'd be shocked at how few people actually want to put that level of work in and will come back to me. But the ones that do, I'm always anxious to help out. But one of the key messages I give to a lot of these young folks is, um, go to a company, a big company that gives you lots of optionality. Take Gap as an example. When I joined the Gap as the head of real estate, there are opportunities for me to work in a retail store, to work
Hmm.
in product presentation, And I took advantage of those opportunities to try and go through that organization and meet different people and try to understand different things so I can find out, is real estate really the job for me, or am I more passionate about working in the store? Or am I more passionate about working on the design team? Or am I more passionate about working in the resource allocation or logistics? So that large company gave me an opportunity to really test different things in that business to see what was the best fit for me. I had at Ralph Lauren, I had an intern that worked for me who came in as his dad was in the real estate business. He wanted to be in the real estate business. So I put him to work for a summer, helping me grow a retail strategy for a new brand that Ralph Lauren was launching. He realized 4 or 5 weeks into his tour of duty as my intern that maybe that's really not what he wanted. He had a lot of great style. He had tremendous confidence. Every day he showed up for work. He looked like a Ralph Lauren, like a Ralph Lauren ad. So I introduced him to folks on the design team. Turned out that was a much better fit for him. And in fact, 20 years later, he's still working for Ralph Lauren in design. The point is, it was a big company that had many avenues, different places where people could experiment and find the thing that was best for them. So my best advice to a young person is find an organization that would give you the most amount of opportunity to test different things and see which one speaks to you, where you would really want to sort of start a foundation for the growth of your career.
I love that advice, Stephen. Thanks for sharing. I would just add, and if you're working for a startup, you need to be a jack of all trades anyway, or a generalist, we call it these days, and you can step up and try and do anything. It doesn't have to be just what you were brought in to do. Great advice, Stephen. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
You've been listening to Stephen Yalof, who's the president and CEO of Tanger. This is Dean Tobias with the Reboot Chronicles. I want to thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you all soon.